What's up, guys? Josh today from the Connection Code here. In this video, I'm going to play for you a recording of an old deal that I closed. It's a discovery meeting with a large financial institution, and we're going to walk through it step by step. You're going to hear me, you're going to hear the clients, you're going to hear some of my team, and we'll show you some things hopefully that stand out. If you ever have discovery meetings where a buyer presents just completely standoffish, we're going to walk you through how we flip the magnet, have them begin to pull us in. I'll microscopically show you some of the things we did to make that happen. So here's the lay of the land. This particular client started off camera and initially said, hello, hi, how are you? And then immediately muted. It was also a Friday afternoon at 3:30. The trap here is to go into presenting mode, to pitching mode. But what's really important to understand is our job always out of the gate is to put the ball on the buyer's side of the field, to get them to cough up why they are here. Why did they take the meeting? Why did they ask for it in the first place? And so we do that through an opening question, which you'll hear in this next clip. Other thing to note is, for privacy purposes, any PII information was scrubbed from the transcript. Okay, let's take a listen to the first part of the call.
How's everybody doing on this? You guys are Central Time? Is it 1 o'clock?
Eastern Time.
Eastern,
Yeah.
Friday afternoon.
All right, we got the whole crew all on our end.
Hey, how are you? Hey, everyone. Apologize for being a little late.
No worries. So for the folks, let me just do quick introductions on the side. My name's Josh, and on the line I have who's our VP and is our senior of. I know you spoke with, and we can certainly walk you through our entire presentation, product, services, but this is probably a good time to ask, just because we do want to focus on you and kind of what you really need to know from us. How would you like to spend our time together? What are the high-level topics you're interested in? And all three of you are muted, just FYI.
Wow, a full 8 seconds of silence. So what exactly happened? Everyone gets on the call, they're off camera, we're exchanging pleasantries, but as soon as we get down to business, they hit mute. Why? Because they're expecting me as a salesperson to begin presenting to them, to start talking to them, and they're distracted. They're probably on their computer, maybe they're looking at email, who knows? But that's a death knell for us. So immediately we have to flip the magnet. We have to stop making them think we're going to start selling them by pulling them in to convince them about why we're so great, and get them to start talking, to start convincing themselves that, hey, these guys might be able to help us. That is done by the opening question. Now let's listen to their answer to our opening question.
Do you want to take first shot, or?
I'm hoping you take first shot, and I'd fill in.
Okay, definitely. So right now, we currently use a vendor services.
Mm-hmm.
We've been using them since probably, what do you think, 2014, 15?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and they've been okay, but what we want to do is kind of go out and see what else is out there. Right now, they help us with our compliance with respect to filings and anything. And so, just being with a vendor for so long, there's got to be other options out there, probably better options maybe. So what we would need help with is on our filings, collecting contributions. Right now, what happens is we do so it'd be nice, to see what you guys have with respect to matching.
Mm-hmm.
We also, what typically happens too is any checks that are mailed from contributors or whatnot, typically we have those mailed to them. We'll just deposit them in with our bank. We use bank. It's over in Maryland. And then typically anytime we need to send a check out to any or whatnot, we'll just we'll submit the request in their system, and then they'll send the check out, and then it'll make it over to whoever we need to make it to. So that's just an extremely high level overview of what we've got going on. But really, it's kind of just trying to see if what you guys have to offer. I'm assuming you have very similar services, but I do have a list of questions, but I'll bring those up at some point.
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
We learn more about what you guys have to offer. Yeah.
All right, so what did we hear? Well, we want to hear about A, want to hear about B, want to hear about C. We've been with our vendor for a while. We're really just looking, Nothing serious. It's a very, very surface level answer with some logical details about what they needed. Again, here's the trap. All right, we understand what you're looking for. Now let's present to what that need is. When you pick up that bait, all the emphasis and pressure becomes on you, the seller, to say the right thing, to have the right solution, and you don't really stand out. We've got to keep this conversation on the buyer's side of the field. We have to keep them talking. So they've given us the background into what they're looking for and kind of why they're on the call, even though it's pretty surface level. Where do we go next? I want you to pay attention specifically to the sequencing of questions.
And we'll walk you through it in just one second. If it's okay with you, I do have a few more questions for you before we roll you through our service offering. Would that be all right?
Sure,
okay,
go for it.
Great. So what you've been with for a while, what are the things they're doing well?
I think they do a pretty decent job as far as the monthly reporting or whatever frequency it is. They send out reports. Hey, we're getting ready to file X, Y, and Z. You want please review the report and get back to us. Let us know if you have any changes or whatnot. So they're good at reaching out with respect to that specific the filings and everything.
Okay, that's good to know. Anything else they do well that you would, if you were to consider making a change, going with us or somebody else, that you would definitely want to have in place with a new relationship?
Yeah, I really appreciate they have a web service where they set up a personalized website for our contributors or members to visit and contribute or update any information they need to. That particular service they're very helpful with that. So if we need to make an update to the website or something's not working, they're pretty on top of that.
So our first question to transition back to their side of the field and to get them engaged more about the real need, what's really underneath the surface, is what we call a do you like question. We categorize that under needs awareness. And the reason we ask what they like about their existing situation is twofold. Number one, it completely flips the script. It puts the ball back on their side of the field. And most buyers are not expecting this. Typically, sellers avoid talking about the competition or play up why they're so great. It's very rare for someone who's selling something complex to be engaged and interested in what a potential buyer likes about their current setup. So you want to cue to them that you actually do care about what's going well. It throws them off. And if you replay that last section, you'll hear him clearing his throat because he wasn't expecting that. So he came up with like a surface level answer of what he kind of liked, which is around communication. And then we asked a second, what do you like? Anything else? And then he gave us even more color to that answer. The second reason this is important to ask a what do you like about your current situation question is it tells us what they like, what's going well. And that becomes valuable information later in the call when we actually talk about what we do, because we will talk about how we can mirror what they currently have. So just put a pin on that. After we get the answer to what do they like, and they feel that we genuinely care, we're interested, we want to know more, we are now going to get an answer to what they actually don't like. And this puts us back on their side of the field to get really beneath the surface of why they're actually on this call. It allows us to get to the truth. So let's take a listen.
Okay. Is there anything they could be doing a little better?
I think with respect to the match, not having to follow up with them a lot on reminders, hey, make sure you get this information over to us. I think, just being more available when we have questions. And, if something's not clear, just ask me a question to clarify, right? So some of the communications might be better.
How do you mean by communication?
So, for example, here's an example. Let's say, hey, we need a check canceled. It went out to a committee. They're saying they didn't get it, so it's pretty much lost in the mail. Can you just cancel it? So it's void, no one can use it. And so there was some confusion on do they just mark it canceled in the system, or do they issue a stop payment? So there was some, and essentially what happened was the check ended up getting cashed eventually, right? Even though we essentially told them, just cancel the check. But that could have been my fault too. I should have probably been more specific with stop payment instead of just saying canceling check. But I mean, it's just those differences, stuff like that.
Yeah. Did you end up burning a bunch of time on trying to track that down and figure out where the check went?
Not really.
Okay.
I don't think there was too much time spent.
Okay.
No, I think the bigger issue was that the check ultimately was cashed, which again, it's not a big deal. You just push it into the next cycle. Mm-hmm. But it was perhaps more money than we were going to get over that period of time.
I see. Okay.
Is that fair?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow, did you guys catch that? That was a treasure trove of information. We went from being off camera and muted, expecting us to present, lead the sale, would have gone nowhere, to them actually disclosing quickly why they were there to begin with, all in a matter of probably 5 minutes. And the answer is this is a compliance sale. They have a firm they pay to handle their compliance, and a check was mishandled and cashed incorrectly. Kind of a big deal. Before we move on, though, I want to point out something that I did wrong and was able to recover from. They told us about this challenge with the check, and I fished a little bit with a leading question. Oh, did you waste a little bit of time on that? They didn't. And you never want to ask a leading question like that. Fortunately, we did such a good job of getting onto their side of the field and listening to them intently that they papered over that. All right, let's see where we go from here.
Okay. Anything else that could be improved upon?
It's one of those things for me, at least. I don't know what I don't know, and it would be interesting to know what kind of technology you guys leverage to manage the systems and so forth. So, here's another example, and this is not necessarily fault, but we have a credit card, a debit card. So sometimes instead of submitting a check, we go onto a website and just contribute that way. In their system, they have no way to kind of track that or manage to that, right? It's either through check, and that's really it. So when I would submit a debit payment through a website, they would say, well, can we not do that because we, on our end, we have no way of differentiating between a debit card website payment versus a check that we sent them. So there's some limitations with respect to that.
Okay. We'll probably want to come back to that point when we show them the web solicitation page and maybe even show them a match option.
All right. Now that we have gotten the full picture of what's been going wrong with the existing provider, the next phase before we ever present is to actually stay on the buyer side of the field and ask them what's known as a solution question. How in their mind would they want this solved? Because one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of complex sellers make is, okay, I hear the problem, now let me try and solve it, without first actually understanding how their potential client even wants it solved. And believe me, anybody that you meet with that has a problem that they need solved by what it is you sell has spent a heck of a lot more time thinking about how they want it solved than you possibly could have. They sit in this all day, every day, and it's really important to allow them to vocalize that. It does 3 things. First and foremost, it keeps the ball on their side of the field. Secondly, it tells you what the solution is they have in mind, so that informs how you present later. And third, and most importantly, is this thing we haven't talked about yet, which is really how people get persuaded. Socrates, 2,500 years ago, mastered this through Socratic dialogue. It's a myth that you can persuade or influence anyone to do anything with your mouth. You persuade and influence people with your ears. What I want you to start listening for is how they're beginning to speak out loud and having the feeling of in their body of what's been going wrong and shortly how they want it solved. Now, think of it this way. They're talking to us and having the experience of us listening about their problems and shortly their solutions. No one else is doing this. Everyone else is maybe hearing a problem, or if they show up off camera and muted, just going right into the presentation. Everyone else blends together, but they have the experience of feeling heard by us. This is incredibly persuasive. Lastly, I hope you caught this. When we began with, what do you like? We heard, well, they're great communicators. But then we asked, what do you dislike? They're poor communicators. This is often, you'll hear this from buyers who are not used to being authentic with sellers. The other thing is, the buyer may not have fully worked out yet what their real challenges are. And so it's really important to give them the opportunity and the space to work it out on the call with you. That will be massively persuasive. They'll have the experience of sharing that with you and no one else. So let's listen to the next section.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you guys think about potentially solving some of these challenges, what do you envision being different? Whether, let's say you stay with and you sort of iron out some of these communication gaps or work with a new vendor. What does that look like from a solution standpoint, from an operational standpoint, from a communication standpoint, even from a technology standpoint? Have you given any thought to that?
What would it? How would that look if we went with someone new?
Or fix the problems with how would it be different?
Yeah,
I mean, go for it. Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to jump in and say, I think one of the big things we're trying to do here is, as pointed out, we've been with this single vendor since almost the inception of it. Mm-hmm. So we don't really know what we don't know. We don't know what else is out there. We haven't, obviously in other areas of the business, we're clearly exploring new vendor relationships on a more regular basis. We certainly wouldn't have gone 10, 11, 12 years with one vendor without exploring what else was out there. And within the world, we have not done that. So, and I will take responsibility for that. I've been with them since the beginning of time. And we just kind of, the first vendor we ran into almost, we said, yeah, let's try that. And so we tried that. So, like, some of the questions you're asking are very good questions. And I think it's difficult for us to respond because we just don't know what else is out there.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to say, well, this is an issue with our current vendor and this is an issue, but we don't know if that there are solutions. Clearly, like communications and those types of things, you can work through this, but perhaps there are limitations on the technology side that we just don't understand. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the reasons we want to, talk to folks like you and try to understand what our options are out there. Mm-hmm. And to the extent that there are better processes and there are better alternatives on the technology side, then that would be great for us to know. And then we can compare what we have versus what we could get elsewhere. So I hear what you're saying, Josh. I think on the communication side, I think we can work that out. Mm-hmm. Or we can try to work it out. Certainly we can be more communicative on our side. We can make sure they understand, look, when we're saying words like cancel the check, perhaps we're using that as a synonym of stop payment, or maybe you should have asked us, does that really mean stop payment? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what we've done in that area. But there are other times where clearly we're outsourcing it because we are not experts. Mm. One of the reasons we started outsourcing, and which you guys are probably very familiar with, is the changing reporting cycle you often want to follow during an election year. And so that became, because I will tell you, when we initially started, I was doing all this. And that was no fun for me. I've got another day job that takes quite a bit of time, so trying to keep up with the whole filings and everything else was a bit problematic. And so compared to that, it was fantastic. And they may in fact be subjectively or objectively fantastic still.
Yeah.
It's just we don't know. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to start looking at what's out there, what the alternatives are, and that's kind of the first step. That's the first step we want to take with you guys and learn about what you offer. How do you go about some of this? And to the extent that as you bring things up, I think that he's got a list of questions. If you bring something up and it's going to hit a pain area for us, we'll certainly mention that to you.
Okay, so what did you guys get from that? We asked our solution awareness question, and the second buyer jumped in and said, hey, we don't really know, and these are great questions, but can you please present? That was the context, except he gave us the answer. He used the word process. So given that we know that there was a major compliance gap with their existing vendor, and that they really care about is ensuring the right processes are in place, we have what we need to go finally to our presentation. Before we do that, though, we're not going to go through the history of our company, what makes us unique. That's all fluff. These guys don't care about that. No buyer cares about that. They care about what you can do to help them solve their problem. So when you present, you got to cut the fat out and speak specifically to what they spoke about. All right, here's the transition over to my team.
Very helpful, and I appreciate the clarification, and that was the sense I got from the top. So based on what you guys are outlining, I think we might be able to help you. When you talk about communication and checks getting incorrectly deposited, one of the things that we'll talk about in just a moment, we have a documented set of policies and procedures. And background, prior to becoming SVP of compliance here, he was head of institutional trust so he was responsible for all compliance at the enterprise level at that bank. And so he brought a lot of policies and procedures here, and he works with our chief compliance officer, who was the former chairman of the commission. So we'll walk you through that. And then a lot of folks do like the way that we can marry the technology with the compliance. I don't want to presume, but I think you might find that there are some potential rooms for enhancements on the tech side with the platform we provide versus what you might be getting with. Would you like us to start with the compliance piece first or the technology side?
All right, so what did we do there? Just a quick general recap of what we heard and how what we do might solve the problems that they talked about. Now, I use the word might because it's very important that you don't be assumptive in your language. Way too often, you lose staying on the buyer's side of the field and you come back to your side of the field and make it seem like you're selling them, trying to pull them over. If you assume one of the things you'll love about our product, or one of the things that people really love about our service when you come over, that's assumptive language. So notice my language is always conditional. I want to stay on their side of the field. I want to keep the channel of communication open. I want to maintain persuasion by asking them questions and listening to their answer. The other thing is, you always, if you sell different lines or different SKUs, or you have a number of different things to cover in your discovery meeting, let them guide by asking, where do you want to start? Do you want to start on A, or do you want to start on B or C? Allow them to guide the meeting. It keeps them more engaged. So finally, we have now transitioned into our presentation.
I'm good with the compliance.
Okay.
That's the immediate need, right? So.
Yeah. So why don't I turn it over to you, and then and we'll take it after that.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Nice to meet everyone. Like Josh said, I'm the Senior Vice President. I manage a team of compliance individuals. We have attorneys on staff. About a third of them are attorneys. The other third are former analysts. And then the last third are just who've been doing this for a number of years. And as you can probably guess, we handle the day-to-day compliance for our clients. And that ranges from preparing and filing the FE reports. We do all 50 state reporting as well. We issue and we vet and then issue checks, right? So we make sure that it's compliant within legal limits and doesn't trigger any additional reporting and all that. And some of our clients say, yes, take all of that. We don't want to manage that in-house. We got other things to do. Other clients are like, that's great. How about you take these things and we're still going to keep check cutting in-house or something like that. So it varies by client. But how this usually works is we assign a manager who will be your main point of contact. We also assign a backup manager because we understand, well, at least I understand, that a lot of people on my team like to take vacation, or if one wins the lottery and says, see you later, we need someone to be able to step in. And then those two people obviously are part of a larger team. And in order to memorialize all the responsibilities, what we do for every client is we create a process and procedures document, which outlines in detail, excruciating detail sometimes, how receipts are taken in. Okay, payrolls occur on this and this date every month. They come from this person. Here's how you have to format it to import it, or if it's automated, here's where the FTP, it's just who can request checks, where are they sent to, who approves reports. So it will go into detail in all of that. We share that with the client, so that way we're all on the same page of responsibility. Josh mentioned when I was there, we had a vendor, and something that I realized when I was there is that I wasn't really comfortable with their set of reviews, I guess. So when I came into this position, one of the first things I did was I instituted 2 sets of eyes that review everything. So what does that mean? You have 10 check requests that you want to get out the door. You send an email to your compliance manager saying, hey, here are the 10 check requests. We need them on this day. Send them directly to the committee, whatever the case is.
Great. So did you see how my team was trained to specifically present what they do to call out the problems that they heard in the discovery section of the meeting? They talked about processes, procedures, individualized review, dual review. They cut out the fat of everything else, and they did a lot of other stuff at that company. Now we're going to skip ahead to the next section. When we end the compliance presentation, I want to show you a very important piece that we engage in with this customer. It's part of our persuasion through our listening. Take a look.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. That was a good overview of the compliance area. That's very helpful.
From the compliance side of things, is this a solution you think that would even work for you?
I think yes.
Yes, I agree. Yep.
Yeah.
Anything specifically stand out?
I mean, I think some of the things you're talking about, like obviously the credit card contributions routing through you guys, where you basically would have the limits built in, because you're right. I mean, and without we will have an exec who will contribute. You know, I don't know. They punch a credit card in, it doesn't go fast enough. Whatever happens, they just keep punching it. The next thing you know, we're refunding $10,000. So,
yeah.
But so that certainly is of interest. And the other thing that I think you mentioned was the opportunity to set up a recurring credit card contribution. And I would assume that recurring could be done on any cadence, maybe annually.
Okay, so what just happened? There's an old adage in sales, and it works just as well in complex B2B sales, that if you as a seller say something, it goes in one ear of the buyer and out the other. However, if they say it, it's the law. So persuasion, understanding it completely, the whole conversation has to operate on the buyer side of the field. We have to be in their world, their point of view. When they say this looks great, I'm not satisfied with that. I want them to vocalize out loud what was so great about it, or why does it work for them? So I asked, do you think this would even work for you? They both said yes. That wasn't satisfactory enough for me. I really wanted to understand what specifically would help them so much. It was helpful for me to hear it, but it's also important that they vocalize it. So they shared specifically what it was. Here's also why that matters. They were talking to us and probably 3 other providers. They have the experience now and the memory of vocalizing with those folks at that company I was working at. Here's what they did so well. Because remember, people don't, even though these are tax lawyers and tax accountants, they don't remember specifics when they're talking to 3 or 4 different people. Everybody blends together, but they do remember the feeling that we could help them. And that was critical in how we advanced this sale, won the deal, and pushed it through. So I just wanted to point that very, very critical 2-part question that we asked to stay on their side of the field. So let's jump ahead into the call.
So what if, let's say we're stuck on something and we need help, implementing some of those features into this website. Is there someone we would go to and say, hey, can you help us update the site so it looks like X, Y, and Z?
Now, when you say update, can you elaborate a little bit more on how you're thinking that workflow would be?
Absolutely. So you just had that screen up. You were sharing that. So there was images in the background. I think there was some radio buttons and stuff like that. I mean, I don't use, you know what I mean? And I'm sure you could, with a little effort, I could learn some of it. But I mean, is there someone on your team that, if we needed to, they could add more radio buttons or add a different image or something like that?
So the answer is yes. With us, it also includes account management, technology management, unlimited training, and unlimited support. So after the website's designed, we'll train you on how to use it. If you want to upload a message from your CEO or a video, we'll train you on how to do that. That would be included. So your team and account management team will be able to kind of guide you every step of the way.
So that was an example of a clarifying question. He used the term update, and that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I never want to assume that I know. So I asked, well, what do you mean by update? And we got more color to what he was actually looking for. Once he explained what he was looking for, I was then able to confirm that we actually do have what he's looking for. Again, More of us operating on the buyer's side of the field, not presuming anything, not assuming anything, and not just jumping and saying, oh, yeah, we can do that. So this particular discovery meeting ended in about 2 minutes after we stopped the recording just there. But it was the first of 5 specific meetings before we actually closed that deal. But what was important about this first call was we had to immediately distinguish ourselves from all the other people they were talking about. And I want to highlight again, they started off camera, on mute, and by the end, they were fully engaged on camera and asking really good questions that informed us on how we needed to advance the sale. We still had to go through legal, procurement, IT cyber ops with this particular client. We're going to go through all of that in subsequent videos because, as you know, in complex B2B sales, it's never a one-call close. All right, I'll see you guys next time.